Hi, and welcome to AI and Mobility, Society, Arts and Science panel. I'm Alessia Bimonte from MIT, and I'm going to explain you how our platform works. It's divided into two sections. On your left, the live streaming of the event. On your right, the live chat moderated on Slido. You can write down your questions and use the poll to interact with us during all the event. Feel free to share your questions also on our social networks: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I leave the floor to Maria Grazia Mattei, founder and president MIT.
Hi. So welcome at this AI4Future Days. I'm Maria Grazia Mattei. I'm a founder of the MIT. MIT is the first Italian center dedicated to dissemination of the culture, digital culture. And MIT delivers a massive plan of activity during the years that bring people to experience and embrace digital technology as a resource for their creativity. MIT is also an amazing facility building at the very center of Milano, and it's also live in the virtual space. So please enjoy the visual. And I hope to see you in Milano very soon. MIT has always worked online and offline as a platform where to come into contact with international ideas and trends, share and co-create together with innovators, artists, creativists, and professionals from different fields. That's why we co-design and co-create international project as this AI4Future. MIT is I'm very happy to be part of the AI4Future, a project founded by the Creative European Program to improve the understanding and dissemination of artificial intelligence technology as a leverage for creativity to design a beautiful, green and inclusive future. AI4Future wants to reflect with this today, to reflect on mobility through its various meaning, that is mobility across the national borders, green transportation, ethics, creativity, mobility in one word, mobility as a digital or social leverage, mobility. We discuss about mobility in the post-COVID era. We want to understand what's happened. We will work with the young European, especially students, change makers, as well as artists who are interested in learning how to use digital technology based on artificial intelligence for their creative purposes and to engage people and raise public awareness. To do so, the project gathers a team of skilled organizations working on cross-fertilization model and at the intersection of digital culture and the social challenges. Creativity and multidisciplinary are key topics for MIT. That is a regional start center and official partner. This is a very good news. Official partner of the new European Bauhaus, the new movement launched by Ursula von der Leyen to design a more beautiful, green and inclusive Europe. So I spend my time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your attention. Let me know thank you to my team too, and also thank you to our today's speaker for their cooperation. Thank you to Barbara. Barbara is our Virgilio. Okay, in this day, maybe tomorrow, I don't know. So thank you so much. I wish you a good work, a good job.
Okay, thank you and welcome. I'm Barbara Carfagna. I'm an Italian journalist and I have some programs in a channel of public TV on digital world and society. So I'm very proud to be here today. So can artificial intelligence be a creative tool for activism or biggest social challenge? This is the aim of AI Future project to a 2-year journey, but I leave the stage before presenting and introducing you the panelists of today, of our meeting today. I leave the stage to Federico Bomba, who is founder Sine Glossa and lead partner of AI4Future for an introduction of the project. Sorry, Federico, I thought it was my problem, but I guess it's a problem for everybody. We can't hear you. So if there's a problem, are you on mute?
I am sorry.
Oh, okay. Now
sorry.
we can hear, so you can start again. Yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. I was saying yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Federico Bomba. I'm the director of Sine Glossa, which is a cultural center based in Ancona and Bologna, and I'm the artistic coordinator of AI4Future, which is an international network of urban labs where artists and young activists cooperate to co-design new ways of increasing the impact of their advocacy campaigns. What we'll do in the next years is to exploit the potential of artificial intelligence and data visualization to address some social issues. We will do it with the support of Creative Europe, a program of the European Commission, together with the help of international artists, and 4 cultural centers who are partners: MIPU, of course, V2 in Rotterdam, Espronceda in Barcelona, and Sardegna Teatro in Cagliari. And I thank you then for being here with us today. So after a series of 8 international talks, today this one is the first one, we will launch an international call for artists for creating digital artworks to be adopted by the young activists of each city. As Maria Grazia anticipated, the topic we have chosen is mobility, something we care a lot in this period because we missed it, of course. Mobility is a very polysemic word. The geographer Franco Farinelli says that the growth of the modern state with the definition of their borders gave a new meaning to this word, implying a new kind of immobility. And if you think to the word state itself, you see how it describes the specific condition of something in a specific moment, which does not have much to do with the word mobility. But then in the 1969, something changes. In the same year in which the first moon landing, which was an opening for the extraterrestrial mobility somehow, the first data exchange between 2 computers in distance happens. And the internet became an important seed for the globalization and a new way of understanding mobility. But mobility in globalization, in the way which we live it and we know it, also carries some undesirable implication and many failures, including the way in which we are dealing with pandemic, for instance. So with AI4Future, we think it's time to redefining the way we understand mobility with the fundamental help of young people to see how they want to shape their future. We challenge sustainable mobility, borders mobility, our mobility in the virtual world, but also mobility connected to gender issues, for instance. And finally, il moto è causa di ogni vita. Mobility is the cause of every form of life, said Leonardo da Vinci. So please, if you are an artist, an activist, or someone who just enjoys thinking about to shape our future, join our conversation and share new perspective for a more beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive mobility. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Federico, for this introduction to our panel. Now I will introduce you the panelists, then you can continue to chat and to answer to our questions, and then I will read, of course, your answer. So I introduce you the panelists. In general, they are Oriana and Salvatore Iaconesi, who are co-founder of HAIR. She Loves Data. It is a center for arts and data to promote new visions and generative opportunities for a renewed sense of humanity. So you will meet them. They're great, and they're very funny also in their talking and exposing their ideas of activism and art and science together. Then we will have Padre Benanti, professor of Pontificia Università Gregoriana. He's a very specific kind of priest. He studied engineering, so he is very expert also on technical issues, but here is called as an expert on ethics of artificial intelligence and their implications for human values. And he argues that it is more important than ever to ensure that the human-machine relationships are framed in a way that benefits people. We will have Giulia Beccarin, who is CEO of MIPU Predictive Hub. MIPU offers a portfolio of service, trainings, and technologies developed in the field of energy data science, predictive maintenance, and reliability. So we will afford with her also a technical side of how our society is growing up in data, and we need to be more conscious on this. So she will be very important in this panel. And last but not least, first is Federico Parolotto, CEO of MIC, Mobility in Chain. MIC has been consulting on transport planning all over the world, combining functional issues with an understanding of urban qualities and sustainability. So, Federico, the stage is for you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have a couple of slides to show. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it or what?
Yes, we can see, but now it's a little bit, yes, okay, now you can see it very well. Okay.
So very quickly, just to say that, you know, we've been working in the field for a while now, in spite of our youthful look. And the truth is that mobility has been changing dramatically in the last 20 years. What this slide is trying to put together to the above line, how it used to be and how it is now. Mobility obviously is one of the components of mobility is obviously technology, and IE is actually a massive component of that. But on the other hand, mobility is now moved away from the old approach, which was focused on vehicles and performance of road network, to a much broader set of things that involves community, that has people as a center of the discussion, the user experience. It has to deal with socioeconomic changes as well as the environment, and of course with a different level of money. So as things are changing now, we have to start thinking with a completely different mindset, which is far away from what it used to be. But it doesn't mean that we actually know what's going to happen next. If I think only, say, 15, 17 years ago, when we were working on transportation, none of those things that you see here in the slide were actually there, meaning that there was no iPhone in sight, and the iPhone meant peer-to-peer communications and GPS locations, on-demand systems. The ability that we take now for granted were not even in sight 15 years ago. It was a completely sort of unknown world, and Tesla was not obviously there at all. And the truth was that the market at the time was kind of questioning itself if it was going to be hydrogen or electric. Which technology would have survived the market or would have been the winning technology? Now it's electric, but 15 years ago it was far from being obvious. And obviously there was no discussions about or no thinking about driverless or anything like that. And also a lot of socioeconomic changes that we are seeing today. For instance, Milan, with the arrival of the thousands and thousands and thousands in fact, more than 50,000 new youngsters have arrived in Milan in the last 10 years. And the truth is that the number of cars in the city has stayed stable. It means that the new kind of socioeconomical and psycho-attitudinal things are happening, and people tend to be not so willing to stay with the car as they used to be only 50, 20 years ago. All of that combined means that, the future that we were thinking of 15 years ago was unforeseeable, if you want. It was unpredictable. And I would say that the only thing that is certain now is that our future is actually uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen in 15 years. The process of acceleration that is undergoing our society is of a scale, and that makes it very unlikely to understand or know what's going to happen in the future, even in 15 years. As transport planner, though, what we can say for certain is that what we will see, and we are seeing already, that together with the willingness to have a better quality of life, with active mobility, with a more engaging movement within the city, we are also experiencing the merging of computers and vehicles. So this is something that is clearly happening, and we think will change a little bit the rule of the game. What are we trying to say is that in the future to come, a new family of objects will start populating our city. We don't know exactly when driverless cars will come along, and obviously how they will engage with our society. And to be honest, if you go to the market, to the automotive market, nobody is really able to pin down a day. Elon Musk and Tesla said only 5 years ago that the first Tesla was going to do a driverless Tesla coast to coast from the West Coast to the East Coast in 2019. Obviously, that has not happened, and he's not saying that anymore. But what is clearly happening through startups and things around the world is that a new family of objects which do not carry people, that sits with us on our sidewalk, that are close to us, that carry us around, and which we physically engage with, are actually coming. And those things are easy to become driverless because they will probably not go on our streets, meaning the car, where the car are moving, but will stay with us on the sidewalk, will stay with us in a slower framework of engagement with our body. And we think that that is where one of the clear challenge of the future will be. How do we deal with those things? How those last mile deliverable will change our lifestyle? How we will move around with those new objects? How they will be combining together? How and what will happen is the challenge of the future. And I think that what is important is now the challenge is not to separate it. There's always that, as Anthony Townsend says, there is always the temptation for engineers to start separating things, dedicating spacing for different things. And what I think is the challenge of the future is to have this new set of technologies, this new set of vehicles to come close to our body, to be close to us, to enter in a way our building. And we have to start engaging with this new kind of technologies. And I think it has to be through the radical space redistribution, with the new approach to our city, with the profound expansions of our road and the sidewalk of our road, because it means more quality for our city. It means a better lifestyle. It means more active mobility, but it also allows space of engagement with this new with new fleet of vehicles that will populate our city. And in a way, our project in Moscow here is one attempt to do so. You know, we've been working on expanding and compressing space on a very large thoroughfare to make more space for people, but also hopefully in the future to take this new fleet of objects, to start having those, to start having that space that takes this new family. That will have to be regulated, that will have to be governed, that will have to be managed by the city. And I think that is an incredible change for the next years. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Federico Parolotto, who explained us how we will live and we will co-live with our objects that we have to become friendly with the objects and who have a different life in our ecosystem. So now is the moment for Giulia Beccarin on stage, and she will talk us about predictive models and predictive analysis in different fields of mobility. Giulia, the stage is for you. Giulia, you are muted, I guess. Now I learned that it's not my problem. So,
okay.
I guess, yes, now we can hear you. Thank you.
And do you see my screen, Barbara?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, and happy to be here. Good morning to everybody. When I question myself what I could share with you about predictivity and transport, I really wanted to share the experiences I've been making with railways. And why did I choose railways? It is because I really like the sentence from Mohammed Yunus that says that the richness of a country is not for the poor ones to have cars, but for the rich ones to be willing to drive by train, to commute with public transport. There are plenty of ideas of how we can use artificial intelligence to improve public transport. Here I share you some, but believe me, the real difficulty is not in getting the data, building the algorithm, making something on the technical side. The real challenge is having the idea of what I can make while putting on value the huge amount of data that are already available in our transport systems, in our cities, and even within us ourselves, in our mobile phones and in our quantified lives. So to give briefly an idea of what, as engineers, we imagined and developed for a national railway, we did some asset catalog that is the idea of solving a huge problem, which is you cannot improve what you cannot measure. And in a system so huge and so fragmented as public transport, it is even difficult to know what you have in place, meaning which rails, which assets, which trains, who is going where to do what. So with AI, you can improve dramatically the speed of this asset recognition and list really what you have in place, and there start measuring and giving ideas from improvements. Another idea is the prediction of failure in switches. Switches are those assets that help the operators move the rails so that the trains do the travel they want to do. And just while using the data that are already available, in particular using current and voltage parameters, so the energy consumption of those switches, we are able to predict 3 months in advance if they will have a maintenance breakdown, if they need to be repaired. In the end, if you can take that train and safely and punctually think that you will be at a certain place in a certain time. Another idea is still with image recognition to detect if there are anomalies, discrepancies on the roadbed, identifying exactly where the objects that are creating some difficulty for the train to pass are. If you have millions of railroads, of roadbeds to control, it is a really difficult task to continuously looking for objects that may obstruct the travel of the train, and there AI is a big help. And in the end, rail anomaly detection is a set of AIs that analyze the geometric parameters of the tracks, seeing if they will have sufficient quality for the train to pass and for it to pass at a certain speed and in total safety for the passengers. These are just some ideas that I wanted to share with you. I guess that with our collective intelligence and creativity, many others will come. And I am really looking forward to having this kind of discussion among us all, because AI can really help us to improve our public transport and finally improve our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Giulia. So now we will see our word cloud pool with the first two questions we launched. So we launched the question. The first question was, what city are you following us from? So we can see which is okay. This is the answer. So we can see Milan is is the biggest one, but then we have Bari, Cagliari, Ancona, Ireland with Dublin, Rome, Torino, Reggio Emilia, Amsterdam, Switzerland also, Trento, Bologna. Okay, so these are the cities. And then the second question, second on 4, what do you think is the opposite meaning of immobility? And of course, you couldn't answer mobility. So there is opportunity, that I think is the biggest one: movement, dynamism, life, creativity, change, flexibility, happiness, fluidity, globalization, connection, new friendships, frenetic movement, new start, transport, happiness, growth, generativity, agility, meditation. Meditation is a very strange, a very strange answer to the question. Okay, but before going ahead with our answer and questions, we will hear now, and I will leave the stage to Oriana and Salvatore Iaconesi, Oriana Persico and Salvatore Iaconesi, with her She Loves Data. They have a very different ideas on data than predictive analysis. Is in some way the opposite idea of what companies and systems are organizing for us or have organized for us until now. So, Salvatore, Oriana, the stage is for you.
Thank you so much. And I won't say that it's the opposite, just maybe a different starting point, no? Because in today's cities, no, everything that moves and everything that lives generates data. No, even if you don't know about it, even if you don't realize it, and AIs don't really see us, no? They see data, the data we produce, and this data is has several interesting characteristics, no? Enormous quantities of data, very generated very fast, no? And to fully understand what happens in the city and how this data and computation really affects your life, you need new sensibilities. You need to have new understandings of this data. So that's where I guess art comes in, no, to create these new sensibilities. And I will share my screen for a second to show you one thing that we did in the past. Can you see our screen?
If you can say yes or not, because we are sharing the screen, so we don't know.
Oh,
yes.
For example, we are both artists and we have a little research center, no, as Barbara said. And with this little research center, we built, among other things, some things which we called the real-time museums of the city. Here we're seeing one which we did in São Paulo, in Brazil. This one was in Rome, for example, no? And you see that in both these experiences, and there were many others, these are just two, you could have visual and sound and movement and interactive access to very large quantities of the data which was being produced in the city, no? And this was a remarkable thing because we are talking about social networks, we're talking about sensor networks, about mobility infrastructure that lets you understand the real-time life of the city, no? And it was incredible, no? And of course it posed also many difficult questions, no? And we were holding workshops, as you see here in São Paulo, with regular citizens, activists, no, in the city, and they could play with all this data, and the results of these workshops also became part of the museum. So it was a museum in which production based on data and computation happened, no? But then the role of data and computation changed, no, along the way, no? We have seen how major social networks, for example, and also scientific operators like Cambridge Analytica and others put our rights and freedoms in danger, no? Because data and computation are intended as largely extractive phenomena, no? So an ethical question was posed onto us as both artists and a research center, no? So we decided to change, no? We abandoned all form of extractive processes, even as research center. We abandoned the tools that we were using, and we invented new ones, because we have started to believe in this thing that we call nuovo abitare, new living, which talks about novel forms of alliances that we can create with technologies, data and computation, thus abandoning all forms of extractive processes.
And we are here in 2020, where this type of problems have an enormous place in our life, an enormous role in our life. If we didn't know that our basic rights nowadays depends on data and computation, after pandemics, well, we understood it. So this switch that we decided at the point that we left our platform, our own platform, and our way to build data, use data, along the years, we had this enormous need, the urgency to create new models and to start applying it. This is what we are doing since 2019 and very radically since 2020. So, for example, what you see in this image is a group of people in Palermo. They are not only people, they are the custodians, the water keeper of the Oreto River in Palermo. This is a project we won with the Ministry of Culture and the Ecomuseo Mare Memoria Viva in Palermo. And in this project, in this experience, in this social experience, data, we are united by data, what we say. So people started to not only collect, but generate data together using sensors. And during these pandemics, the data has become a platform not only for expression, but also for different social experience. So these people, which are citizen and art student, together, they started to become water custodians. So this new social role. So, for example, what you see here is something that is only for the custodians. They are wearing, it is a mask, of course, digital, and they are wearing the Oreto River. What you see is the shape of the Oreto River. So as soon as they go together to collect data, they can also wear this role and show this role on social media, for example. And so at this point, they, as you see in the other image, this is a group of people going around the river. So they invented a new type of expedition, a new way of moving through the nature together, even during pandemic, in a very safe way, united by the fact and the possibility to discover nature through data. And at the end of the project, which is about to come, because at the end of this month, we will have the final event and the exhibition. They will all this data will feed an exhibit inside the museum, where people will go to meditate about data. But the biggest point here about new type of model is that these data are not data that are there and can be just extracted. People people need to take care of it in a social process. It is a new social pact around which new experience, in this case, also a new way to go through the river in the city, to make a new type of activism of just enjoying, this relation with nature in the city is possible to be built because we can access this new dimension, this new existential dimension of data.
Thank you, Oriana. Thank you, Salvatore. We will hear from you in the second part of our panel. So now the stage is for Padre Paolo Benanti.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Which kind of perspective could offer on this topic by an ethicist of technology like I am? Look, to give a sense, to give a pitch to this discussion, I would like simple to give you 3 examples of technology of transportation transformation given in New York during the last century, and let emerge the ethical category that we could apply to the giant digital shift in AI and transportation that could happen now today. The first scenario, the first case, is what happened in New York City, Manhattan, between 19 and 1913. There are 2 really famous pictures of the Fifth Avenue. In the 1900 year, the Fifth Avenue was overcrowded by horses. There are no cars in the Fifth Avenue. In 1913, on the same street, on the same place, there are no more horses, and just cars are on the street. We could imagine that the arriving of the engine, of the combustion engine, could produce an endangerment of population on a transformation that was negative for people. That was really not at the beginning, because you have to know that before the arrival of combustion engine car, there was 100,000 to 200,000 horses in New York City. And every year, the statistics say that 20,000 New Yorkers was used to die due to the maladies from fly that would come out from horse manure. And what does it mean? That probably the transformation operated by the car start as a new improvement of the life. But ethically speaking, we know that today the number of cars and the pollution produced by the car produce much more problem than the horses at the original moment. The second thing was about job connected to the transportation. In the 19, we have a lot of blacksmiths and not any tire shop in New York City. The exact opposite happened in 1913. The job market was totally transformed by the shift of transportation. What can happen with this kind of shifting that digital transportation can produce? And more than that, technology convergence say to us that when a graph of technology come together in a non-linear way, we have a huge transformation. So the problem what is that digital applied to transportation, applied to mobility, could produce a huge and not linear impact on society. So the ethicist has to stand up the awareness that we have to think out of the box to be able to make a social adjustment, because the transportation could be, and the mobility could simply break the system or could change the system in a way that is not anymore social compatible, especially when we think about the scaling, the shifting of the mobility in a way that is not possible to predict anymore. The second example that for me it's really enlightening on the kind of ethical challenge that this kind of changing could produce is what happened during the 30 and the 50, always in New York, because at that time we have Richard Moses, that was the man in charge of the new construction of the huge infrastructure of the state of New York, especially the parkway that was made to connect New York City to Long Beach, to Long Island. And, you know, Moses that has a really well-defined political ideas allow the project of the parkway to be made with some kind of special concrete bridge over the parkway that was not enough tall to allow buses to transit by. So they was 2 feet lower than a standard bridge, and in that way only the white middle class, that at that time was the only owners of a car, could arrive to the beach. Because in the mind of that political man, it's just a duty and a privilege of a social class to use that kind of beach. Now, what we can produce from that every technological artifact is a displacement of power. What does it mean? That we are not speaking anymore of concrete bridge, but the algorithm that we are putting inside the new wave of mobility, the way in which the data, as we heard before, and other structure will connect us, they can allow or not allow to exercite our right, or could allow or not allow to be equal, or to divide us in new classes that are not intended at the moment. The third and the last example that come from New York that could simply allow us to think about the problem that this technological shifting could produce come from Central Park. Central Park was bought by the New York municipality at the end of the 18th century for $5 million. You can think Central Park as the symbol of ethics. If you are in the real estate business, is it Central Park and not business zone? If you are in the mobility business, is it Central Park and not business zone? Is it the ethical limitation of business? That's untrue. Because if you see how much Central Park is evaluated now, it's really hard to evaluate. But the last one that was made in 2015 gives to this piece of land $500 trillion values. What does it mean? That if ethics is not by design, it could be too costly to be applied. If in this technological transformation we do not make an ethical by design approach, the transformation that we produce could be unethical and unmanageable anymore. And the second thing, if you look at the real estate properties that are facing Central Park, they get a lot of value. So ethic, if it's by design, if it's included inside the transformation shifted by technology, could be the huge momentum for values and to allow the business to be human-centered and human-compatible. So this is the voice of ethics. The answer has to come from technology and from politics. Thank you very much.
So we have seen in our first part of the panel different points of view. So we have seen positive aspect and organization on sustainability and efficiency of the city and the transportation. We have seen a new model of generative data opportunity, and we have focused our attention also on the dangers of algorithms possibility to create this equality and the necessity to build a social compatibility for in the system. So let's go to the other two questions that we left from our pool. That was what is the first thought that comes to you about AI mobility? 25 people answered that these people, self-driving cars, the age of intelligent interaction, self-driving cars, smart mobility, mass, autonomous, security and optimization, shaping a different future, e-mobility, driverless car, freedom, automatic change in the cars, allowing us to avoid collisions either with hardware or software, convenience, increase of mental. What are we going to do with big data? Automotive data floating speed, less accidents, reach easily any pace in less time, combining technology and serendipity, sharing opportunities. Okay, freedom, newness of a new place. Okay. And then we have also the other answer we didn't show, that is, in your opinion, which of the following actors are the challenging the proposed mobility theme? And It is first, science and research centers, second, political policies, third, enterprises, fourth, public opinions, fifth, visual and performing arts, sixth, press and media, seven, non-government NGO, 8, university, 9, family and friend gatherings. Okay, so now let's go to your questions. To our panelists. I just read myself. You can read them yourself, and we can choose our answer for our panelists for the second part of the panel. So I also read what about digital mobility. And let's start with Giulia Beccarin. Could you name some project of the social use of predictive analysis? And what about digital mobility?
So I work in the specific field of predictive factory and predictive cities. So the projects I can name, having done or participated in them myself, are in this specific field. For instance, we use predictive analytics in order to forecast if there will be a flood affecting a city. And by forecasting it, we can manage the opening of the switches that help the water make its road without having dramatic consequences of the cities. This is a real example already in place in northern Italy, and it's a good example of public and private cooperation, where the collectivity, the public, gets the best way on how to manage the flood, and the predictive advisory on if there will be problems, and where, with exact location and the detectability of where there are going to be problems with 1 kilometer range 2 days in advance, which is a very good result. And private company who is managing the hydroelectric plants on the lake where we are doing it is gets the with predictive analytics gets the idea on how to best manage the hydroelectric plants in order to provide energy to the community. So I think this is quite a good example on how, using already available data, you can really have a big impact on everybody.
Okay, thank you. Now another question that I would ask to Salvatore and Oriana is, the pandemic showed that we could renounce to physical mobility. What do you think about what we learned?
Thank you.
In my opinion, we can't renounce to physical mobility. We will see the effects on our mood and psychological side, and also on the physical in the next months. But anyway, the answer is for you.
Absolutely. And we could also answer this question, and the first one, which I saw on the screen, the creative use of data, because what we have learned is that this new dimension of our lives is really something, is really something that we have not yet grasped in its extension. We are barbarians still, no? For example, mobility. Mobility as determined by data. Let's take the lockdowns. Data is processed somewhere and the results of this processing determine if I can or cannot move. Without even having to rely on conspiracy theories, there is something explicitly wrong here. And this thing that is wrong is the permanent condition of separation to which we are exposed, no? Some data is extracted from somewhere, hospital, people's health, etc., is processed somewhere else, separated from us, and then the results largely determine our rights and freedoms. This separation, this continuous separation, is remarkable, no? Because it is clear that to survive in today's hyper-connected world, we need enormous quantities and qualities of data to survive, to defend our rights and freedoms, to thrive, not to benefit and to have our well-being, no? This separation is the question, no? Because because we don't actually have neither the senses nor the skills, no, the standard citizens don't know how to deal with such enormous quantities and qualities of data, no? And that's again where art may come in, no? Because we could imagine creating these new alliances between arts, sciences, technologies, in which art brings new sensibilities to these processes, and breaks this separation, no? Breaks this separation, transforming all this data with the alliance of computation into sounds, into music, into visuals, into something, into new tactility, something that we can wear, something that we can feel, experience and discuss, no? In culture, no? Data is not a technical issue anymore. It's an existential, cultural, creative, artistic, poetic issue, no? And this is the answer to almost anything. Our bodies are not sufficient anymore. We need to establish new alliances to evolve, no? Culturally, spiritually, in this way. So I think this is a direction which we can all feel.
Embrace.
Embrace, no? Science, technology, the arts, society, no? The connection between technology and psychology.
Okay, thank you very much, Salvatore. Now, for Padre Benanti, I would ask, since AI and mobility are technologies, how humanity can be part of it?
Yep. Because the technology is based on the real unprecedented power to be connected to the fact that decision that before was made by human could be surrogated by an automatic system, yes, we could imagine a future in which man is out of the loop. Basically, that means that we are developing a model in which there is a huge competition between Homo sapiens and this new kind of machine that in a provocative way I would like to call Machina Sapiens. But this is not necessary and is not the real future that probably will happen, because the real problem is how to keep man in the loop. So all the ethical discussion, all the ethical questions that I simple in some way let emerge in the few pitch that I give before, suggest us that an ethical solution for AI and this new kind of data model or modelize or analytics are much more effective in the measure in which the man is in the loop. So an ethical solution, an ethical development of AI technology is the one that assures that the man is in the loop, that the decision, especially the most important in the process, are made by men. Other ways will be an algorithm that is written by someone else, that is encoded inside a piece of hardware and software that is a black box for the user, that simple keep the user as a thing that is inside the transportation system. So keeping the man in the loop do not mean that everyone has to be the one in charge to decide, but means that because with transportation, with mobility, with everything that is connected to the risk, at least theoretically, that someone could die, has to be accountable in a human form. So allowing the human part of the machine-human system be accountable for means give to the human the ability to understand what's happening and to give the last call in case of conflict. So this basic ethically suggestion cannot become a simple soft law principle that every single company could apply or not. It has to become an hard law system that has to be mandatory to assure that the mobility driven by data and AI could be the best servant for the humanity. To do that, we need politics, we need a new kind of legal tools that simple expose what ethics and other societal and also art suggest to us to simple shape the best possible society that we could desire and imagine today.
Okay, now the last question for our panelists is for Federico Parolotto. Can you mention an amazing case study of urban redesign through mobility?
Well, maybe what I can say is something that is in a way maybe the contrary. In general, I think that the contrary on an amazing mobility. I think in general, at least in cities, what's happening is that we are progressively seeing a change in the time, basically the expansion of space for active mobility and other modes away from the car. This space redistribution will also bring a new urban policy and in general will improve the public realm. And I think this is a key element for competitiveness in cities. I think if, for instance, if Milan wants to stay at the center of the game in the next decades to come, he has to profoundly change the way the public space is allocated, compressing immensely the space for the car and changing it completely. In my opinion, if somebody has to quote a great example of rethinking completely how transportation in city works, we should see the work done by Salvatore for Barcelona, the Barcelona super blocks, because I think in that project there is like the idea of a profound radical space distribution, a rearrangement of the transport surface, a massive slowdown of cars and expansion of space for people. I think it might sound a little cheesy over before, but I think this process of change is now mandatory for cities to stay competitive, but it's also mandatory for cities to be transforming into sustainable cities. We have to move away from CO2 emissions. We have to bring back the climate emergency at the very center of our line of thinking, and therefore great transportation has to come with the idea that we dramatically reduce CO2 emission. I would also like to close with an experience that I had, not directly, but I've been experiencing indirectly about data set. I leave it as a question open. I don't have an answer to that, but Google, through its subsidiary Sidewalk Lab, decided in Toronto to open up a new, well, they basically purchased a large part of the city waterfront and decided to develop it, deploying a data set that was coming through their obviously immense data sets. And, you know, it meant traffic lights, it meant testing driverless. And I think there was the what she's called the Jane Jacobs of smart cities, Bianca Wiley, who fought massively against Sidewalk Lab and data. And she said, why do I need a private entity to control traffic lights? Why do I need a private entity to develop a forefront, a city part of the waterfront, and then deploy their mobility patterns? I think here, when it comes to data sets, we're opening up, I think it was mentioned by the panelists before, a massive component of governance. And we are starting from a completely unbalanced set of subjects. Large corporations have immense power. So if I want to think about, to go back to the question, a real transformative process, it is something that sits without data for the moment, looks at massive space distribution, and in my opinion, if somebody wants to see a great transformative project, a great mobility project, you should look at the Superblocks proposal for Barcelona by Salvatore Rueda.
Quote a study on the real environmental impact of electric cars.
Maybe I can mention something very quickly here.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I like to quote, you know, Bruce Mouse says that, you know, we are too many at the moment. We are always talking about the explosion of demographics, but we tend to forget the explosion of car demographics. There are almost 1 billion cars on the planet. And as Bruce Mouse say, we are so many that even if McDonald's decide to design a new burger with maybe 5 BlackBerry in it, you know, the BlackBerry production of the entire planet would be affected simply because of the sheer numbers that are involved into that. So thinking that we have a solution, a technical solution that doesn't have an impact on the planet is of the scale of a car is ridiculous. You know, we are just too many and there are too many cars. And to be honest, to go back to the ethic that Paolo was mentioning, I also have to say that at the moment in Italy, but very often around the world, cars are not the ones that used to go below the bridge by Robert Moses, are the broke ones. You know, the lowest, the poorest part in Italy with second and third hand car are the people that are moving by car. And so to say that there are no impacts is obviously unthinkable, but that to say that we have to move away from fossil fuel CO2 production and have a new vision in terms of electric production and electric cars is, in my opinion, a must. Is not under discussion. So we can question about the impacts, but I think there is very little room to divert from going away from CO2 emission, internal combustion cars.
Okay, thank you. Let's see our last question of the pool. What do you think if I say artificial intelligence, 42%, it could be a good ally for humans? So we can see that the dystopian scenario is 0. So of course, this is a very, very, very cultivated public because as we've seen also in the story of cinema and TV series, the dystopian scenario is what takes the mind of the majority of people. As we have some minutes, I would ask Oriana to tell us about the experience of artificial intelligence of neighborhood that they've done with Salvatore 2 years ago, because this is a good example, I think, to show in this panel.
Well, first of all, thank you, Barbara, for remembering and for covering the story. And I will start from the fact that we were able to create a neighborhood pregnancy, shared pregnancy with an entire neighborhood here in Rome, because like in 2006-7, we have become ourselves parents of an artificial intelligence. So again, here the point is that dystopian future can be avoided only if we embrace the fact that data and computation and our artificial intelligence are existential phenomena. We need to deal with that starting from this position. And we really like what also places like MIT are doing by establishing a fact that we have to deal with culture, we have to deal with sensibility, we have to deal with all these dimensions that are part of our life in a very broad sense. We need to establish relations with artificial intelligence.
So
And also,
how was this newborn nourished by all the neighborhood?
This newborn and Salvatore, please also enter the scene, because we were both parents, remember? And so the shape of the baby was a non-human baby on a baby stroller when he was born. In the beginning, a long process made of a series of workshop made able the neighborhoods and very, very different type of citizens, from nannies to grandparents to people in schools, to be part of the conception of the baby, then of the education of the baby. We were not talking about training, okay? We were talking about how we can educate this new actor, these new inhabitants of the neighborhood.
No, I guess that the most important part is what we were saying before, avoiding at all costs separation and extraction processes. The neighborhood artificial intelligence was taught as a new inhabitant of the neighborhood. Maybe a strange inhabitant, one that you, as all inhabitants, one that you might be fond of one that you might dislike. But
anyway, everybody could participate to create the informations for the food for this artificial intelligence. So the system and the newborn, at least it was a son and inhabitants of the neighborhood.
More than just the information and the data, they contributed to shaping the model. No, so it was, to cite Paolo, it was not a black box
Absolutely.
at all. No, because all the actors in the neighborhood were able to participate in shaping the model, no, and to criticizing it, and to monitor how it was growing and what it was learning, and if they were okay with it. No, so it was. We made a parallel, which in my opinion, we should always keep it in mind. Current artificial intelligence are like industrial chickens. No, they are fed enormous quantities of data at once, no, and we cannot control them for quality. They're just too large data sets. Instead, in this case, it was a healthy biological chicken, no, because it grew progressively in society, no, literally on the sidewalk, because we were pushing that baby stroller around, no, and that's the whole difference. So people could assume a relationship and responsibility for contributing to the role of this artificial intelligence in the neighborhood.
So I would ask a last question to Padre Paolo Benanti, which could be the side on mobility of this idea of Salvatore and Oriana, I mean, this new approach.
It's really interesting. Actually, we saw a lot of business model apply to MAP. If you think what happened at the end of the last century, when the GPS arrived in the pocket hand of every one of us, before we are used to pay a fee every year to have a GPS service connected inside our pocket. At one moment, we have the best GPS solution in our mobile for free. But the money that cost this kind of system has much more than the one that was used at the early 2000 year. And why now is free? Because the market try a way to simple monetize the data that we produce using the GPS system in the mobility system. Because the data that we produce give a lot of information and meta information that has a value as a money. Now, if we can make a cross-section in which the political power shape a contest, in which the data that are produced by this new kind of mobility, the idea of paying with data, and a business model that is not just to make a market or some player grow, but to create and disseminate a form of richness that could become a really innovative mobility in which the sharing economy is not just only to not impact in a negative way on the environment. It's also something that effectively build communities in a new way, in which my data is also offered to someone else to give him the power to be mobile inside society in a way that is not strictly money connected. So the space is open. It depends on in which way we will play it.
Okay, thank you. And we have finished with our panel, and you will find this panel online next week. And I leave you announcing the panel of tomorrow, always 6 p.m. That is a panel with Jeffrey Schnapp. He's a designer, historian, and humanist. For years, he has been conducting research on how to integrate humanistic culture and the digital world. He teaches at Harvard, where he founded co-directs the MIPU Lab, and interdisciplinary laboratory that unites creative and scientists. So he's also a chief visionary officer of Piaggio, Fast Forward. This is what it has to do with mobility, and the company Piaggio that works on the new forms and designs of urban mobility, with a team including designers, engineers, and managers. So it will be very interesting. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you to our hosts. Thank you to Maria Grazia Mattei and to Meet. And I hope we will come all together to visit Meet in Milan. I came twice, but I'm very lucky because of my job, of course, so I can move and I can also share with you, and I shared in some of my report the digital immersive space, and I hope you you can visit, because remember that what we can show and we can see on digital or on TV is not the same if you come here and live in immersive. So goodbye, and see you tomorrow at 6 p.m.